A huge thank you to Sigmatic for sponsoring today's video. Hello and a very warm welcome back to the garden. Today I've got a ton of kale to transplant. They're going to be succession planted after the previous crops of this year, and I thought it'd be the perfect opportunity to show you how to become self-sufficient in kale year round. So this here is my Brassica Seed Bed, where I'm starting off everything from purple sprouting broccoli to Brussels sprouts to cabbage and also to kale. In fact, I've got 7 different varieties of kale. Now, I like to start brassicas off in a seed bed, especially kale, because if I start them off in modules, say in a polytunnel, they're going to take up so much space because I grow so many brassicas. To sow brassicas that you're then going to lift up and transplant, I've got rows that are about 15 to 20 centimetres apart, and for all brassicas, I sow them around 1.5 to 2 centimetres deep, so just under an inch. So you just make a simple line like a normal drill, and then you transplant the seeds quite thickly, maybe like 1 seed every 2 or 3 millimetres, and then they're just going to grow up like this. They're going to grow up tall. The most important thing though is to make sure when they are small seedlings, keep them really nicely watered. And now it's time for me to come in with a fork. I'm very gently going to go around and I'm going to find whatever variety I want to transplant. So this is going to be some cottager's kale, and I'm going to lift this, pop it in this bucket of water, and then start transplanting them in places where I've already had a crop or harvest this year. It's a perfect opportunity to then succession plant with most of your brassicas, and kale is one of the best for that. We all know that kale is a bit of a superfood. I've got red Russian kale growing here, and the main reason why we grow kale is for the leaves, and it's super productive, especially over winter. You just take a little and often harvesting approach, and it's a very welcome green during some dark, cold, wet months. Now, on top of obviously having the big leaves, you can also treat kale like a microgreen and grow them really thickly together and then harvest the smaller leaves. But my absolute favourite harvest that you get from kale is actually from the flower stems. So during the hungry gap, when there really isn't much available, kale will run to seed. It's then going to send out a load of flower shoots, and just before they break bud, you harvest them, treat them a bit like purple sprouting broccoli, and they are absolutely delicious. Talking about superfoods, I want to thank today's sponsor, Sigmatic. Sigmatic is a wonderful company that I've been using for well over a year, and they specialise in creating organic, gluten-free and plant-based mushroom blend drinks. For those of you who, like me, had no idea what Sigmatic means, it's actually a scientific term for the 100 most researched and nutrient-dense foods in the world. And the products created by Sigmatic offer us a really easy and simple way to implement these great foods within our daily routines. One product that plays a big part of my mornings is the ground mushroom coffee with lion's mane. Now, lion's mane is amazing for productivity, and one thing that really surprised me is when you're drinking the coffee, it's delicious. You'd have no idea that mushrooms are there. It's a real kind of dark, smooth, nutty roast. This coffee is also crash-free, which is a great thing, and it contains chaga, which is a mushroom that supports your immune system. So if you're looking to bring a little extra to your routines, just like I like to start my morning with a cup, or it's usually a mug of lion's mane coffee, then check the link in the description. There's a coupon code for up to 10% off on Sigmatic products, and I think you're going to be quite amazed by the sheer volume and choice of things on offer to help us from morning right through to nighttime. Now, in general, the sowing times for kale is around March to early June, and then the harvesting is any time from July all the way through to March and potentially even April. And here I've got this cottager's kale that I'm actually going to start transplanting here in this bed. And I'm doing a bit of an experiment. I'm going to grow all 7 varieties of kale here just to see which one I think, in my opinion, performs the best, because I'm always looking for the hardy varieties to really make sure that they go and last all the way through winter. Now, if you do want one that I know will always give good results, then that's going to be the dwarf green curled. So all I'm doing is putting in kind of a general handful of compost. I'm just using some Dalefoot compost here actually, the potting mix, just to give them a little extra goodness, like that. And I'm going to start, because they're in water, it's so much easier to start to separate these plants out. So I'm just going to give them kind of a nice shake. This is what I do with all my brassicas and also with leeks. And it might seem quite damaging, and they'll wilt for a bit, but then before you know it, they'll be perking back up and they'll start growing really rapidly. I'm going to select this massive kale, and it doesn't matter if they are really big, they're still going to transplant just fine. So I'm going to get this one here as well. So in terms of leaves, kale for most of the year is always available for us. It's usually kind of May and June where you might not have the leaves that you're after. And so what I'd recommend that you do is, say in early February, you can start off some seedlings on your windowsill. And what that's going to allow you to do is get the smaller leaves ready, because you can transplant them into a polytunnel or something kind of towards the end of March. You'll let them grow through April, so it means that during May, June, you're going to get smaller and kind of medium kale leaves just to see you through that gap. So it's not always going to give you massive leaves that you're wanting, but what it does allow you is a continuous transition right through the 12 months of the year for you to be able to harvest kale leaves whenever you want. Now for me, I don't really care so much about growing kale through May and June, because that's when I'm enjoying all of the kale flower shoots. So ultimately it really comes down to, and I think this is something that isn't mentioned enough when it comes to self-sufficiency, is firstly working out what do you actually enjoy eating the most. And you don't want to start having something where you just eat it all of the time, because it kind of takes the fun away from it. That's why just growing a little bit of kale all through the year is going to make a nice difference, because you'll always have it available, but you'll never feel that you're going to have just way too much to deal with. And you can save the hungry gap for the most special part of kale, for those flower shoots. There's a general rule of thumb if I'm transplanting the majority of my brassicas. I use a trusty stick. This is a bit of bamboo as a guide between plants. So I like to transplant them around 45 centimeters apart. And the other thing is I'll just grab another plant here. Is that a great thing about brassicas is that you can actually plant them right up as deep up to the first kind of leaf. So you don't need to plant them right here where they're growing in the ground. You can bury them nice and deep to this leaf, and that's going to help create a stronger plant, because some of these bigger ones might need a stake later in the season when the winds start picking up. After they've been transplanted, I'll just go through, I'll give them another good water. I've already given this a nice soaking. And then the final thing with brassicas that's really important is they actually like to grow in a firm soil. They don't want something that's super light and fluffy, because they need a strong root base. Otherwise, if the wind comes, they'll just get blown away. So what I actually do is very carefully, after transplanting, I'm actually going to step around the stem of the plant like that, just to help firm it in nicely. And now this is a solid kale plant that's all transplanted and ready to get growing. One thing you might notice is that this kale isn't under a net. And I don't actually net my brassicas. I've got swede, I've also got a load of kohlrabi behind me. None of them are netted. And the reason why is that there's a little bit of a balance happening in terms of the pest-predator balance between the bird life, which is amazing around here, and also the cabbage white butterflies. But I do keep an active eye out. I'll be looking through leaves every now and then just to see if I see any clusters of eggs or signs of damage, and then I'll deal with it then. I feel that if I net them, I'll get a full sense of security, because if I net these, I'll think that they're protected. I probably won't look at them as much. And then I've known some people who have lost whole entire beds to cabbage white butterflies because they had that sense of security. The other thing though, I am really lucky, is that because it's not close to an urban area, we don't have a big pigeon problem. And I know a lot of people in urban areas do suffer from pigeon damage. So I know this case is unique, but if you're in like a suburban urban area, I would definitely recommend netting your brassicas. And just a little tip, try and make sure that your brassica leaves don't touch the net, because the cabbage white butterflies can still lay their eggs through the small netting. In terms of general maintenance for your kale plants, it's really quite simple. I'm just lightly hoeing out some of the weeds that have appeared. And if you live in an area where you tend to get snowfall, that is one of the dangers that can come upon kale plants during winter, because if there's a ton of snow, it can actually cause the plants to collapse. So what you want to do is just knock off any heavy snowfall just to keep the plant standing, and that's really it. But in all honesty, if there's one thing that you can get started with in terms of being self-sufficient all through the year, kale works fantastically. Because it stays so fresh for so long in the ground, you don't have to worry about all of the storing methods you need to do for things like garlic and potatoes. It really can't be simpler. It's hardy, it's tasty, you've got lots of different variety. Kale is that perfect crop for you to really get your foot through the door into kind of a world of approaching self-sufficiency from your growing space.